Okay, this is the 2014 number 3 AP Macro FRQ. It's a shorter question on the back, and it's going to be about foreign exchange between the United States and South Korea. So it says their trading partners in the U.S. has a zero current account balance. Assume now that the inflation rate in the United States decreases relative to the inflation rate in South Korea. So I know that the United States is going to have inflation decrease. That means their price levels are lower. If they have lower price levels, that means that things are going to be cheaper in the U.S. compared to South Korea. So now, 3, Part A, based on the decrease in the inflation rate in the United States, will the U.S. exports to South Korea increase or decrease? Well, I do know that if things are cheaper in the United States, then the exports are going to increase, aren't they? So it's asking about exports to South Korea. And that is a very simple one because it's just they will increase. And you can get away with just writing increase. That's a good thing about this course is that you don't have to answer in complete sentences. Be quick, be concise, and be done. Okay? So the next question is, based on the change in the United States exports in Part A, answer each of the following. And then, so now we're going to have Part B. I'm going to show the B and the single I. Okay, will the U.S. current account balance remain at zero, be in surplus, or be in deficit? So it's going to be in surplus. And they don't ask why, but I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, so remember, our exports are going to increase to South Korea because our stuff is cheaper. So that means they're buying it, and we're shipping it to them, and then their money is coming into our country when they pay for it. So the United States current accounts balance was at zero. Now is it going to go to surplus or deficit? So remember, a credit to the current account is when goods and services leave our country, and so the money comes in. When the money comes in, that credit creates a surplus in the current account. Now I can move on to the second part of B because it didn't say explain. What will happen to real GDP in the United States in the short run? Explain. Okay, so I know that our exports went up, didn't they? So net exports is equal to X minus M, exports minus imports. So if our exports are going up because people in South Korea are buying our cheaper goods and services, if one component of that side of the formula goes up, then the other must go up. And I know that sig X is equal to aggregate demand. And if net exports is going to go up, aggregate demand is going to go up. So then, as aggregate demand is what GDP is to us, so I know that GDP is going to increase. So if GDP is going up, that's our explanation right there. So I'm going to get a point for saying it's going to be in surplus, then I'm going to get a point for saying our GDP will go up, and higher U.S. exports increase aggregate demand. And that increased aggregate demand is going to be what they're asking about right there. So that's my explanation. Remember to keep all these things in mind whenever you're solving this problem about net exports. Okay? Now, those are my 2 points. Now, part C. Of course, they want you to draw a graph. Now, it says the South Korean currency is the won, W-O-N. Yes, that's real, the won. Draw a correctly labeled graph of foreign exchange market for the U.S. dollar. So right there, I know I need to draw a foreign exchange graph. Let me move this over here so you can see it a little better. So remember, it's supply, it's demand. I'm going to label it as the dollar up there. And the dollar goes underneath all of my symbols. So it's going to be the dollar underneath the W for the Korean won. That's our current exchange rate, and that's our quantity. So now, what's going to happen if people need to buy exports, or they want to buy our stuff and we have to ship it to Korea? So the lower inflation rate, what's going to happen is people in Korea are going to put their won back in the supply, and then they're going to demand dollars because they need to buy our exports. So they're going to show demand of the dollar increasing to the right, and that is going to drive up the exchange rate, or the won divided by the US dollar. So Q to Q1 is going to show that the demand, or quantity demand, is increased. Sorry, that's an arrow. That's pretty ugly right there. Okay, so even on the rubric, it's going to show the demand increasing. Now, you only have to label what they ask you to. All these extra quantities and things I do just out of habit, okay? But this is from College Board's actual rubric, okay? So as long as you're showing E to E1, E1 to E2, whatever, because they didn't tell you exactly what to label it, you'll be in good shape. So you get a point for showing your graph. I get a +1 for the graph, and I'm going to get a +1 for shifting demand curve to the right. Okay, so this isn't a real long FRQ. It's only worth 5 points. Okay, so I got everything labeled out, got all my points done, and all my explanations. So don't be afraid to write on these as you go and show your symbols and just think your way out of each question by, labeling it throughout, U.S., Korea, inflation, all these parts right here. Okay.